Okay. Thank you. We are at item 10.3, electoral division boundary revisions and the public participation plan. And we'll hand that over to Lane.
Good afternoon. The information that's in the council agenda package is certainly an update to the details that had been provided previously on this particular item. The timelines that are open for completing this process are significantly condensed over that which had been originally anticipated. An error has been made on my part in that I was referencing a copy of the Municipal Government Act that was current as of 2018, and the legislation has changed, so now the process requires completion of new divisional boundaries and approval of a bylaw by December 31st of this year to take effect for the October 2021 election. So I guess there's a couple of things that need to be decided. One of them, first and foremost, is whether or not council feels that there's still enough time to go through the process and provide for some meaningful engagement. In case then we need to certainly expedite the process. I'm not sure what else to offer in the way of an apology on that oversight on my part. There is still time to go through the process and provide for meaningful engagement. We had never suggested all along that there would be a need for public meetings, and certainly under the current situation that we're in, it wouldn't be appropriate to be holding public meetings on this. What we had anticipated doing all along was making information available to the public. They would download, they would have full access to, and they would be in a position to provide a response on their preferences for the options that were being considered by council. So as I've indicated, there is still time to go through the process. It would require a bylaw to be introduced for first reading during your first meeting in November. We will be able to concurrently run through the community engagement process, invite feedback, and have responses from the public available for review by council in December prior to motions being considered for second and third reading for the adopting bylaw. So quickly, that's an overview of where things are at right now. We did include in the agenda some alternatives for boundary options that could be considered. And of course, these are not in any way, shape, or form set in stone. They can be moved as well. But if there is interest in going through this process, getting things in place in time for the 2021 election, it is necessary for us to move pretty quickly on this. So with that as a foundation for the discussion here with council, I can take any questions or try to provide additional information that may be required.
Excuse me. Thanks, Lane. Thoughts, councillors. Brian and Anne-Marie?
Well, I certainly don't have a problem with still moving forward. I guess the question that I have is, would there be a possibility to even introduce that bylaw today, just to speed up the timelines? Or does that need to be, is there further stuff that needs to be done background prior to this? I mean, we've had the discussion as far as the intent of moving this forward. I'm not suggesting that it's going to pass 3 readings after going to the public. But I mean, I'm just trying to give an extra 2 weeks for the process to work, for the public engagement to be part of it. So maybe help me out with that, Lane, as far as what's stopping us from introducing the bylaw today.
Well, the most important thing that will prevent us from doing that today is we don't have tentative boundaries that we would need to reference in a bylaw. we literally do not have a draft bylaw available for review. We don't know which option council wants to include in the bylaw when it's given first reading. The earliest we would be in a position to do that is going to be your next meeting in November. There is still time. We can start the consultation process. The council is prepared to identify which option they want the bylaw to be based on. The information can be prepared, made available, and ready for distribution as early as Monday of next week. And the consultation process with the public can begin at that time. So I don't think it's necessary personally for a bylaw to be introduced prior to the beginning of the consultation process.
Anne-Marie?
So Elaine answered one part of my question about the first reading, because I do think we should go ahead. We've done the census. We started the process, so we have to speed it up a bit, but we can do it because, and I can only speak for my division, there was an article in the newspaper already. I have talked to several people, so the discussion already started. And it's not like we're starting at ground zero. So for me, it's doable. Let's just go ahead, do the public consultation, and have the bylaw in place for our next meeting.
Lionel?
Yes, we've been toying with this idea ever since I joined council, to be honest with you. And so I think we've done a lot of preliminary work already, and it's probably a good time to just move forward, even though the time frame is a little bit tight. If you can make it work, Elaine, I think we should carry on.
Wayne?
Just a question. So we would be picking one of the three scenarios outlined for us, and that is what we would go forward with. And what would happen if in this consultation process, people are dead set against the scenario that we decide we want to go with? Then do we have to change things again, or what? How does that work?
The whole bylaw approval process anticipates that there is going to be changes made between first and third reading. You need to give first reading to a bylaw to get the process formally started. Amendments or changes can always be made by council prior to second reading or prior to third reading. So the idea is that we would have council give first reading to a bylaw. That map or proposed divisional boundaries would be what the consultation process would be based on, but it would be clearly communicated that if there is a need to revise it based on feedback that has been submitted that makes sense and can be justified, there's an opportunity for those changes to be made prior to third reading being granted.
Ellen?
I'm just wondering, what if the responses from our ratepayers is that they would like to see this postponed? I spoke to quite a few, well, all I had time for, about the time frame for the participation of the public, and all thought that it was too short of a time to consult with the public. So I'm just wondering, so let's say after first reading, would it still be possible, let's say from what, again, I've only spoken to, well, several people, but so let's say it came back as to, my goodness, we would like a little extra time for the consultation process. Would that still be possible then to postpone it, if you will?
The bylaw can be approved at any point in time. The thing that council needs to be aware of is that if it's going to take effect for the October 2021 election, it has to be approved by December 31st. If it's approved after December 31st, then it takes effect for the next election, which would be in 2025.
Kelly?
My position or my thoughts are that we can go ahead with this, that it'll become a discussion item for the next 3 months and it, or 2.5 months, and it can be done. Suggestion under the Y lane is I would like a reference to the MGA where it says that the discrepancies between size. I think that gives some more strength to our Y on your Y document.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.
Other thoughts? Ellen?
Lane, just for clarification, I was just wondering, did I get it right that so our constituents have the time from November 26th then through December the 2nd to bring on their formal responses? Is that correct?
No, that's incorrect. We're proposing October 26th, so it would be Monday, this coming Monday, when information would be distributed.
Sorry, I misspoke. I meant October 26th through November the 2nd. So that would be then a 5-week window. Am I correct in that?
Correct. Now, one of the reasons for needing to compress it just that much more, if the second meeting in December was going to proceed, we would have until then to approve the bylaw. December 24th is your second meeting if the schedule remains as is. So if we had 2 meetings in December, the process could be lengthened with the expectation that the bylaw would be approved during the second meeting in December. We're in the unfortunate situation this year that there's only 1 meeting in December this year.
Hubie and Wayne?
So actually, the second meeting in December wouldn't be till December 18th, right? That's the last grant. The third reading.
As per the existing schedule, it would be December 24th. The second meeting could be rescheduled to take place at some other day than the 24th of December, which would add some additional time to the community engagement process and give us just that much more time to consider the feedback that may be provided.
Yeah.
Wayne?
Is it possible to have a special meeting if we want to make sure that the consultation goes forward and everybody's involved? Say we have a special meeting on the 18th, like Hubie was thinking, or even pick another day to pass this bylaw. Do we have to do it on specific council days, or can we have a special meeting to do that?
Bylaws can be passed during special meetings. The second meeting in December, it could simply be rescheduled. It wouldn't have to be a special meeting. As it stands now, it has been canceled, but it would simply be a matter of council saying that you want to proceed with a second meeting and setting a date for it to take place, and it would simply be a rescheduling of the December 24th meeting.
So, for example, December 23rd. we could have a meeting. We've had meetings before on the 23rd, have we not? Yes, over the years. That might be worth consideration for a start. I'm seeing heads bobbing. Thumbs up to give more time. It certainly couldn't hurt to do that, to add that extra time in, I think. Anne Marie?
Well, and extra time is good, but I like the way Lane has it laid out. We have clear options. It's a clearer schedule on how we need to do it. And we as councillors need to be active on this one too. If it's a shorter time frame, then let's work a little bit harder to speak to people and get as many opinions as you can and encourage people to bring their vote forward through this plan that Lane has set out.
So you're fine with the extra time plus the extra work, basically, that council, or not extra work, but the work council needs to do.
You bet. And yeah, the extra time, like you guys are talking about the meeting on the 23rd, I'm okay with the way Lane has it set out.
Wayne?
Molly, yeah, we could go with that schedule. And if we find, say, on the second meeting in November that we need a little bit more time, we can extend it at that time. Even the first meeting in December, we could probably extend it a little bit if we feel that we need that. And to go with the process now, start it, and then see how it goes from there.
Yeah, I guess. I just think it might be a good idea just to make it a bit longer right from the get-go. If we're going to consider that at all, I just think it would make sense to do it to begin with, not at the tail end. But if people don't want to do that, that's a council decision, I guess, one way or the other. I'm just looking for the timeline here. Other thoughts, questions? So Brian and Clarence.
Well, I think that extending it out is good, as a good practice. I mean, it's been mentioned that we are compressing the consultation period, and I think in an effort to not only move this forward, but to give people the opportunity to have their say, then I think it's important that we try to do our best to do that. And let's face it, if we go to the 23rd, it won't be a long meeting. This is an important move for council to make. And so gathering the input is a good thing. I would have been fine with the other schedule too, but I think the recommendation and also the concerns of some of council as far as getting having a longer consultation period with the public is a good thought. So having a special meeting on the 23rd, I would support.
Clarence.
I guess my question is, how many people are going to want to discuss electoral boundaries on the second week before Christmas? That's the time you're adding. That'll be the furthest thing that anybody wants to talk about at that time of year.
So you're saying we need to start the discussion right now and be done by then?
Let's be done by the 10th, yeah. I'm easy, but let's just think what time of year it is and what are people doing the weeks before Christmas. The last thing they want to do is talk about council. So, I mean, does it really make that much difference? What 23rd or the 10th. Just a question.
Tracy?
Yeah, I think that we should leave the original recommendation for time frame. We have a whole month. We have the whole month of November and getting into December to participate in the public and get feedback. You know, this time of year, sure, everybody's lives are busy, but if this is really important, they'll get their feedback to us. We've presented many, many options to get this information out to our ratepayers. And beyond that, other than, like we said, as counselors, we can talk to as many people as possible. But if we're presenting the information and if this is really important to them, we're going to hear from them. It's not going to take them a month to reply if it's really important to them. So I think leave our time frame, move forward, and move on. So in addition to that, then I would like to make the motion to go ahead with our plan as Lane has presented, with the one change just under the Y. I agree with Kelly in our MGA. We need to identify those requirements for the unbalanced numbers and the percentages that we are required, because I mean, that's what we're governed by, so we need that. With that change, I would like to make that motion to go ahead as presented.
Further discussion on that motion? Ellen?
Yeah, so just for clarification, so we're just voting then on the plan itself, right? One moment. So, and that includes then the exact time frames that are in it, and that stayed the same, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
I've always have trouble at the wrong times. I've lost what we're talking about, but any other comments? So there's a motion on the table to go ahead with the plan with the additional Y information that Kelly put forward, and the plan has a timeline in it.
Madam Reid, if I might, just a couple of comments, just so that council's clear. First of all, the references that Councillor Chrisman is referring to in the MGA, it's actually in federal and provincial legislation that deals with the federal and provincial election process. There isn't specific recommendations in the MGA, but those principles of proportional representation are established through provincial and federal electoral review processes. So that's what I would be referencing in the document. Now, what we would be looking for as well, when a motion is passed, we can have council approve the public participation plan, but we will also need to have council identify which one of the boundary options they want to base the bylaw on when it comes back to council for first reading.
Okay. So we've got part of, so you want to put that all into the one motion then, that we proceed with the timeline, and then we have to choose a map as well. Correct, Lane? Is that what you're saying?
Correct. The public participation plan can be approved in one motion, but we will require council to confirm which map you want us to base it on.
Okay, so maybe we should get the first motion done then, which would involve the public participation plan. And so you mentioned the explanation for Kelly. Kelly, are you all okay with what Lane said?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Or it needs to be worded to put in the reason why we started this process. It's legal.
Yeah. All right, further discussion on the motion? Ellen and Wayne?
Yeah, so I have no problem at all with the plan itself. Just to clarify that I do have a problem with just because I spoke to several people, not all from my own division, and it was quite clear to me that they thought the time frame was too short, I should say. I'm sorry, too short. So I personally don't have a problem with the plan. I mean, obviously, we don't have much of a choice because of COVID. We can't really meet in public at all right now, correct? It would certainly be nice to have an open discussion, if you will. But if that's not possible because of our pandemic issues, it's unfortunate. I certainly would have liked to seen a postponement so that we would be able to have a public meeting or meetings, if you will, and that it can be discussed in that manner, since so many people do not have social media and that sort of thing. So anyway, just my comments.
Your mic's not on.
Thank you. If the idea is to get this information out on Monday, I believe, and into every type of media possible, and then we can talk it up and make sure people get on it. And so they would have until December the 10th, because that's the second reading, to make changes or to tell us even that the process is too fast, whatever, and we could take it from there. Wayne.
Need your mic on, Wayne.
Sorry. I'm going to oppose this motion for the simple reason that we originally thought we had till the 1st of April, and we are not willing to extend it to, say, the 23rd of December. I believe we should be giving our ratepayers as much time as possible to consult with them, to inform them what's going on. And I believe this is rushing it just a little too much.
Kelly?
So, Wayne, would you ask the mover to amend her motion to, or are you just making a comment?
I would vote for this if we had a special meeting on the 23rd for the vote, so that our ratepayers would have more time.
And although it is the Christmas season, I don't think it would hurt to have a meeting on the 23rd either, personally. That's just my belief. Tracy?
I guess I'm not prepared to change. It's your choice. I just believe that we are putting it out there to people in every way possible. We also have a job as a counselor, if that we are very concerned about what our ratepayers and getting their feedback, that we have the responsibility to contact them and say, this is what's happening. These are how you can get a hold of the county to give your feedback. I think we have a lot of time in a month. Like, even if you just took the month of November, there's that many days where if you could sit down and make 2 or 3 or 5 calls a day to your ratepayers, we could get it covered. So I think that it's all about getting it done. We're taking care of business. And I think there's more than plenty of time. So Ellen, just a question. With your population as it stands now, if you did 10 calls a day, how many days would that take you to cover your people? It would take you a month. So, to me, I just think we need to push it out there. We've covered all the social media. We're going to do newspaper. We've covered all the aspects of communication. I think we can get it done. I don't think it's rushing people at all. And again, going back to December and what people are focused on at the beginning of December, it's not going to be this. I'm not prepared to change my motion, and you can vote against it if you like. That's fine.
Yeah, just to respond to your question, I'm just wondering, I phone numbers to all my constituents. Is that a possibility that someone can? Do we get a list? I don't think I have a list of my constituents and their phone numbers, to be honest with you.
No, we don't have lists, Ellen. We don't have voters lists for municipal elections either, so.
But Tracy was asking me if we could just call them so many calls a day. I'm certainly willing to do that, but that the problem is I just don't have a list with numbers. Respond to your question.
Well, I guess you just look at the phone book. Most of us know most of our constituents, and whether they're in the Zano area or the Duchess or Brooks phone books. All right. Tracy has left her motion as is. Ellen?
May I ask for a recorded vote, please?
Sure. Any other questions, comments? Everybody knows what they're voting on. Okay, I'll call the question then for Div 1. In favor or against?
In favor.
And 2?
In favor.
3?
In favor.
4? Wayne?
Against.
5?
In favor.
6?
In favor.
7?
Opposed? 7?
8?
8's in favor.
9's in favor. 10?
10 is in favor.
So the motion is passed. And so now we will look at the the plans, the maps, Lane?
Okay, so the first map that's in the agenda package simply has the population count for each township area. The second map, what we have tried to do to the fullest extent possible is include entire townships within any division. We haven't wanted to break a township down the center. It's entirely within a division, with the exception of Lake Newell Resort, because Lake Newell Resort will be split right down the center between two different townships. So the entire Lake Newell Resort hamlet has all been allocated to the proposed Division 5 population in that map, and that's why that population is so much higher. The next map, version 1-2, we have again tried to the fullest extent possible, include all the townships in one division, with the exception of two townships that are at the north end of Division 5 and between Divisions 7 and 6. You'll see that the line in that map for those two townships has been split so that 2/3 of two of those townships lie in Division 6. 1/3 of those two townships lies in proposed Division 7. So that evens the population out better than what the previous option provided for. The final one that's there, version 3-2, we have abandoned the principle of keeping to the fullest extent possible township blocks in one division. There's a number of the township blocks that have been split between multiple divisions, and on this one, the population is as evenly spread as we can possibly get it at this point. Now, I emphasize again to council that the model that you go with, it doesn't have to be any one of these three that are before you. There is still an opportunity to look at adjusting it somewhat so that you're more comfortable with the divisional boundaries that are actually going to be included in the bylaw and would be the subject of the community engagement process. The actual fact is that if council isn't comfortable in making a decision today, you could come back to this on Tuesday when we're meeting for budget purposes. You could take some time at the end of that budget meeting and have some further discussion on which specific option you would prefer going with if you feel that you're not given the time that should be allocated for this part of the discussion during today's meeting. So that's a real quick overview. Open to discussion on that at this point.
All right. Any comments? Or I can start. I will start. Nobody's got their hands up. For my first reaction to the three was that I liked the version that kept as much as possible the old division together with new, as opposed to splitting the old division up. And I don't know if that happened in some of yours, but for that reason and the population balance, I guess, that is the division. Version 3 was the one that was my favorite, I guess, if there's a favorite. Anne Marie.
I'll go next. I like the third one also because of the numbers, but when I looked at 2, the second one, I think the numbers are still close enough. And I like the fact that Division 3 would go south and not west. So number 2 would be my first choice, but the third one I can also live with.
Tracy?
I really like the idea of keeping as much as possible to the townships. It's more of a defining way to keep track of the boundaries. I really like that idea. Having said that, so number 2 was the one that when I looked at it all, I liked the number 2 one. It does split up a little bit, but mostly the numbers are fairly good and it keeps it to the township. So I like the number 2.
Hubie?
I chose number 2 as well because of much the same reasons, because of the townships. And the populations are pretty close to the same as well, like Tracy said. Right off the bat, that was my favorite. Yeah.
Other thoughts? Brian?
Well, I guess it was a question, and I don't want to complicate it by any means. I personally like number 2 probably the best, but was there any consideration given to using highways, major thoroughfares as divisional boundaries? And again, that's a side note. It's not something I want you to change. It's just a question. I guess when it comes to I'm getting gunshots from Lionel, so I better shut up real quick.
Clarence?
Mine is a question, because when we say 1, 2, and 3, are we doing it the order that they're coming in, or are we doing it by the number? My first one is version 1-3, and then I've got version 1-2, and then I got version 3-2. What numbers are we using here? Because I'm confused, and I want to make sure we're all talking the same one when we're saying 2 and when we're saying 3.
Okay, I will start because I was the first one to spoke. I was talking about the way they come in the order.
Okay.
Computer. Tracy also, Anne Marie also, Brian also.
Okay, that's good. That's the way I was doing it too. When I look at that and I look at what we're trying to solve, and it's basically we're trying to solve the populations around the city, where more growth is going to be. And when I look at the last one, that version 3, it's the one that probably the best, and it also has the most even splits among populations, and that's why we're doing it. That's where I could. That's what would be. My second preference would be 2. I can live with any of them, but I just think because you have to look at what you're trying to solve. And you don't want to be doing it in 10 years again. So let's start with where we do the best job of splitting the population and work from there. And if we get lots of feedback, well, I guess we can change.
Kelly?
Yeah, I think Clarence made some good new points, and I can go with either 2 or 3. Either one would be satisfactory to me.
Lionel?
Yeah, I'm with Kelly on that. I would go with either 2 or 3. I think they're very similar, and So I could be satisfied with either one.
Tracy?
I'm just wondering when when this is presented to the public, so can we show the two options then? Like, is that what we're trying to come up with is, are we coming up with just one map, or can we say, like, if we agree that, you know, we're all kind of looking at the same sort of 2 or 3, we're okay with that? Is that an option to present to the public, that we can show a couple different maps?
Yes.
Lane, what was your choice?
The information package, I think, should include a range of options, and one of them identified as the one that council has selected as the preferred option. Would be entirely appropriate to do that.
Other comments? I have a question. When you guys look at this, as I mentioned earlier, for me, what I looked at to try and see if there was one that kept old Div 9 more or less together, so that at least people were in a bigger area but with the same old area, sort of. How does that work for you guys, or do you care? Like, was that a consideration at all? And maybe it's just because of the way the map is for me. Like, if you look at version 2, there's a group of us that are in a long north-south division. For example, the Hutterite colony, which is right borders us, is in a different division, which, I mean, has to happen sometimes. But I just wondered if any of you looked at that as a consideration for your areas. And if so, does that make a difference in your thinking? Anne-Marie? Wayne?
Wayne was first. I'll let him go first.
Wayne?
I don't like any of them because it rips my division 4 in half, and I sense I'm going to get quite a bit of resistance, and it may not. Who knows? But,
Yeah.
One of those scenarios even comes close. I mean, it's just, and I've already heard some comments from some of my people that they did not want to go with Rolling Hills, but and it was because of recreation. That was the only reason. It wasn't personalities or anything. So.
And I did consider kind of keeping the division as close to what it was, and that's why I picked the second one, where we go south rather than west, where we would take in Duchess. The numbers are still quite close, but because, like Clarence said, we do this exercise because we want to even out the numbers. I guess I could live with number 3, but for the same reason, Molly, I picked 2 as a first option.
Brian?
Well, and you asked the question about previous boundaries, and unfortunately, everybody's going to be affected. So that's the reality. That's why we're going through this process. But for the same reasons as you and Anne-Marie stated, that was my choice for number 2, because number 3, Duchess isn't even in my division, or what would be a division that I will no longer represent. But anyways, the number 2 does respect it more so. But there are lines on a map, and at the end of the day, I'm not going to get hung up on if the consensus is number one, the one that I choose the least, I'd be fine with it. You're asking a preference. I don't think we should get too hung up on this. I think we should wait for the feedback from people. We can state our preferences. I'm fine with doing that, and I've said so. But we're really not going to make this decision until December 10th anyways. And that's after the consultation. Let's not get any preconceived ideas, because we might come up with something different. And so I'd just caution us not to get too entrenched in what we're looking at today on a map. I mean, this might be the perfect answer, but if it isn't, let's be open to looking at something different too.
Absolutely, Brian. Good reminder. For Lane, then, I just wonder, should we put out 2 or 3, or like, do you have an idea of what you would like to put out as something to be discussed?
I think there's no harm in putting out the 3 that are before council. But having said that, I think that it's clear, based on the discrepancy in population distribution that still occurs with the first map, that's what is least likely to be considered, because it still lands us in a situation where there's a significant discrepancy. It will meet the plus or minus 25% of the average, but it still is significant discrepancy in the overall distribution of population. So putting out the 3, I don't think is a problem, but focusing on which one council has chosen to base the bylaw on is certainly doable, and we can state why that particular one was chosen out of the 3 that were before council. And it can also be clearly stated that even the one that council has chosen is open to adjustment. That's the whole point in going through the public consultation process.
So we do have to choose one for the bylaw.
Correct. The bylaw that you would be giving first reading to would be based on one of these map versions.
Okay, yeah. But for the information that goes out to the people, that has to be part of it then, Lane?
You would confirm that the bylaw that council will be giving first reading to is based on one of the options and tell them which one it is. But it would be clearly communicated that council is open to input, and that there is an opportunity between first reading and third reading for changes to be made in those final boundaries.
Tracy?
Okay, so I just want to clarify again in my own mind. So in my mind, what I was thinking that we would take out to the public was that we have recommended changing the number of our council members to 7. And we need to change our electoral boundaries due to population numbers. And we have a couple map options. Does that go out to the public first before the bylaw, or we're going to establish a bylaw first?
Based on the timeline that has been proposed, the information package would be proposed to distribute it starting Monday of next week. The actual bylaw document will not be presented to council until your next council meeting in November, but it would be based on one of the preferred options that council has identified.
Tracy?
So the other comment that I just kind of keep going through mine, I appreciate everything that Brian has said in his last comments, The other thing too, I think a piece that, you know, like we're worried a little bit about splitting, you know, like Wayne's concerned about Scandia, Rainier, and Bow City. The thing of it is, once people know their division, part of the election process is to have a councillor in place that they feel will best represent them. And that's also part of the job of a councillor, is to represent the people in their area. So we can't lose sight of that. So, you know, if your division's changing from, you know, a bunch of acreage owners and now you just have farmers, or you're going into an area where you're, you know, have some heavily, you know, more hamlets or something, like, we just have to remember that we're there to represent all of our people. And we're going to be, those people will be more evenly represented by this change.
Yes. Absolutely. Further feedback. So from what Lane has said, we do need to sort of focus on one. I mean, we can put out a couple, but if we're, so for the next meeting, November the 5th, I guess, that's when we have to have the decision for the bylaw. Brian? No, Clarence. Clarence and then Tracy.
Just something that kind of struck me right now, and I say, well, what are we trying to solve? Well, we're trying to solve that the growth areas have become underrepresented, and we're trying to solve that. And then I look at the second one, in which I said I could accept, and I still say I can accept it, but let's realize that one of the strongest growth areas, or where we probably would guess the strongest growth area is Div 4. And it already has 1161, which is one of the is the highest population that's already there. So, you know, you'd say if that's the highest growth area, why are we still keeping the highest population there today? When that's probably going to be the area that causes the problems in the future. None of us will be around, but that, you know, that's probably where it's going to be. So that, to me, that's a major drawback there for me. Because being the old math teacher, I look at numbers. And we're trying to solve numbers. And then you got to put some things aside and say, hey, the numbers say number 3. And you can make a case for that. There are going to be people that don't like it. Some of us don't like it. But you have to say, okay, what are we compromising when we do that? And one of the things we would compromise if we go to 2 is that we still have the highest population, where we right now have the highest population in the most underrepresented area. Not as drastic, but still there. Not a good place to start from, I don't think.
Good point, numbers guy. Wayne?
I agree with Clarence 100%. I'm never going to be happy the way my division is tore apart, but I don't see any other solution for it. That's just the way it's going to have to work. But on the Division 4, maybe we should try and lower those numbers from 1055 on scenario 3, even lower, because the population is going to build. And if we lower them as we divide it, it will build up, and as time, it'll probably become the biggest division again. So maybe we should take a little slice off of Division 4 and put it on in 6 or 5. Just something, but I think with Clarence, I agree with maybe the 3 is the best. I'm never going to, My division has to be ripped apart. That's just the way it works.
Anne Marie?
And Clarence, if you look at that second option, the numbers in the Patricia area, Division 3, I should say, are on the low end. So to me, it seems so easy to move that west boundary over a bit. We don't have to necessarily stick to that. Is that a township line you pick? Like, move that over, and then Division 6 and Division 4 will be lower in numbers, and Division 3 will be pretty equal.
Yeah, but how do you do that? That won't work.
Or you could just pick a road.
That in number 3, Anne Marie, just that it's not just, it's done more on the north side of it rather than through the center.
You're talking number 2, right? Clarify.
Yes, I was talking about number 2, because in number 3, you're going to include Duchess, and I felt that was maybe too big a change. Again, I try to keep an open mind, like Brian said, and nothing is written in stone. But if you kind of look at how the division is now, and if you want to, I know it has to be bigger, but to include Duchess is a radical change, where if you go further south and keep it all rural, it would be less of a big change. So that's why I looked at 2, and
Duchess isn't part of it.
In Division 3 it is, or in version 3 it is. If you look at version 3, Duchess is included in Division 3.
Geez, Marie, I just heard that Duchess and Patricia got along so well.
They do. There's just a wonderful relationship there.
Duchess is not part of it. Duchess is her own entity.
And that's true enough, Wayne, and that's why I said, my first choice would be 2, but 3 is fine with me too.
And I'll tell you, if three certainly for me, if you look at 2, you look at the road I live on, I don't know, it just seems like a weird, there's this little thing that starts right at the northern boundary and goes down to the edge of Division 4. It's a long, skinny division. Yeah, that was my point. And I don't really care personally about that, but I think that I will get reaction because of those few, that just sort of, it's a long, skinny division from Finnegan right down to wherever that is, south of Duchess, I guess, way south of Duchess. So that's why I like 3 better, but we got to listen to the feedback too, obviously. And I like Clarence's argument. If this is about numbers, that whatever it's called around Brooks is probably going to continue to be the growth area, isn't it? I don't think it'll be other areas. Kelly?
I do think we still need to agree. What I heard Lane say is he needs an agreement from council on what to base the bylaw on, because he has to create the bylaw for our next meeting. So I'm good with version 3. I would be happy with that.
Make the motion, Kelly.
I move that we base our bylaw on Division 3, Version 3.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. Ellen? Oh, go ahead. Were you not done, Kelly?
I was just going to pull off of Clarence's idea of how we could reduce Division 4 numbers down to about that number. I mean, the computer can do it much easier than we can, but just so that it's on the average to lower side of our growth. And that's kind of going against my motion, isn't it?
Kelly, does your motion refer to numbers?
It did refer to version number 3, yes.
Oh, Kelly, version number 3 has Div 4 lower than just about everybody, except Div 7. So you've actually, that's what it does. If we're saying 4 is around Brooks.
Yeah, Division 4 is still on the high side, is it not, at 1,161?
I got 1055.
At the wrong one, okay,
Yeah, you're on 2, Kel.
thanks.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor then for number 3. Version 3. Questions? Tracy and Ellen?
More of a comment too. Like I'm good with this one as well. We also do have the leeway of some growth potential too, right? We don't have to be within exact numbers. So there is that, you know, can be acceptable. And, you know, none of us have the crystal ball to predict where the growth will be. All of a sudden something might happen in Patricia and it just blows up over in that area. Like we don't know. Economic times, they could hit Bazzano is the new metropolis. But we do have that leeway of numbers to a certain percentage as dictated by government. So, you know, it's a good place to start.
Ellen?
I'm just wondering, Lane was speaking earlier and saying that Tuesday, during the budget meeting, we still got a chance. We have a very long time. I'd like to see them, I'd like to print them off and see them next to each other and see the difference. Would it be a big problem to make a decision on Tuesday? It's only a few days, weekend.
Lionel?
Well, I think you go back to the same old problem. There's never enough time. You're always, the decisions are made too early. And we've heard that so many times on council that groups are never ready. I think we have an opportunity here today to make a decision and to move forward with something that we've been discussing for many years already. So why not continue on with this process? Make a decision. That's what we're here for, is to make decisions.
Thanks, Lionel. And I mean, I did print them off and look at them and try to figure it out. So yeah, I don't think time will make a difference. And remember, this is just something to attach to our bylaw for people to look at, to work with, because we have to have something for them to work with and to put out there. So we could spend a long time trying to make it better, perfect, different. It will change because public input is coming. Anne Marie.
I totally agree with you and Lionel. I mean, we had these maps in our house since last Friday, so that was lots of time for us to look at them, talk to people, and I'm ready to make a decision on this too.
So Kelly has a motion on the table. Any further discussion on it? And we must keep in mind, like, this is only to put forth a document eventually. Well, it will be going out that people can look at, discuss, give us feedback. We want that. That's what this is all about. Make it better. All right. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion was unanimously passed. Okay. Lane, anything else?
Not on that matter. Thank you, Council.
Okay, thank you. Item 10.4 is the Duchess rec agreement. Is Matt with us?
Hello.
Hello, Matt.
Tag I'm it. Is that the idea?
Yeah, it's up to you.
All right. Well, in my experience, recreation is probably the easiest service area to get anything done. So I expect this will be open and shut real quick. So in the ICF agreement with the county and village, we agreed that we'd get a new agreement in place for recreation. I had the pleasure of meeting with Councillor Amulung, Councillor Chrisman, and our Reeve with the village counterparts, and we kicked some things around, and what you have in front of you is the result. Some of the key components there, and I anticipate everybody's had a read through the agreement. Governance, so we're looking at a rec board made up of members from each council, 2 councillors each, and then 1 member from the Ag Society to get some representation from the society as their major service provider of rec facilities up there. Operational funding, we're looking at a 50-50 cost share. This is based on fixed contributions over the term of the agreement, and the starting point was 50% of the average net operating costs for recreation from 2015 to 2019. And then each year those will be inflated by 2%. On the capital side of things, the Recreation and Culture Board would be responsible to review any capital funding requests. We did ask for a list, a 5-year list of capital projects from both the village and the society. The numbers coming out of that look like about an average $180,000 per year will be coming at the rec board for projects to consider. We sent it back to the Ag Society to prioritize their wish list of things, and they've since done that. So I imagine that'll be one of the first things that comes to the rec board to consider. We agreed to, or have proposed to cost share that on a 50-50 basis between county and village for village capital projects, and anything on the Ag Society would be 50-50 cost shared county and village, less any fundraising grants or donations that the Ag Society may have secured. On the community group funding side of things, each of us will pitch in $5,000 to the rec board fund that they can entertain requests from the skating club, whoever it might be, minor hockey, and provide some support to the community that way. I think on average, Sharon said, most of the money that has been going to the rec board has been going to the Ag Society and a little bit to the village for their rec center, and then the balance, I think on average about $8,800 has been going out to the community groups. So that allocation should take care of them. In terms of overall funding increase, we're looking at about an additional $76,500 in the first year. This agreement really reflects bringing that Duchess rec area closer to what you see in places like Bassano, Rolling Hills, Tilly for a level of funding. That's all I've got. I'm happy to entertain questions or pass them to Clarence.
Brian.
So I guess a couple of questions. First one is was there any, I know, and the only reason I'm bringing it up is because it's on one of the documents here, page 3 of 8 on your attachments. The bottom item there, the paving, gutter, hall, curling rink paving lots for $538,000. Was there a mention of the amount that the regional enhancement has contributed to that amount? Because it was over $400,000.
There was no mention of that or acknowledgement of the regional dollars coming in and how they would have been split up there. One of the things that I like about how this agreement is proposed to be structured is previously our rec money would go to the village and then the village would write all the checks. This has us supporting the village for their share, and we'll actually be sending our check to the Ag Society. So I think it makes it a little more transparent where the dollars are coming from for the support.
Thank you for that, Matt. And by the way, thank you to the 3 that represented the area county on that. Wonderful job, and thank you for the effort you put in. The other question I had, if I may continue, Reeve Douglas, is that in regards to the amount of money collected through the rec portion of our mill rate from Div 8, what is that? How is that related? Like, how is that amount in comparison to what our requisition is going to be when it comes to what we're going to be responsible for going out the door? So what's coming in from my division versus what's going out?
Well, I'll have to recalculate it once all the lines are redrawn up there. But,
no. We're doing it on today's basis, not into the future.
From Div 8, 2020, we levied about 66,000, and we've sent them about 45,000 to date. So we will end up sending them a little bit more than is collected solely in that area, but that's not unheard of. For instance, Bassano would be the other current example. We collect about 60,000 from there, and I think we've got about 198,000 going back out for the town of Bassano.
So when you say that number, and I used to always get confused, but I think I understand it now. We always talked about identified properties, and then we matched it with basically doubled the money from identified properties from without the whole county. Is that just identified properties, or is that the total amount from other counties? Okay.
Yeah, that's just the identified property. So yeah, typically in the past we had doubled it, and that would be the amount that we send.
So what we're saying is that in reality, it's pretty close. It's pretty darn close to what that normally would be if we would make our requisition to that amount, right?
Yeah.
Like for what we're actually collecting.
If you doubled that, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you guys. Thank you again for all the work you did on this.
Anne Marie?
Yeah, thank you, committee. Good job. My question is about timelines. I'm assuming we already paid our rec money for 2020. We have no board in place, so should the date here be 2021, January 1st, 2021?
The conversation that I had with Yvonne around the intent of it, so they did want it dated for January 1st, 2020, and I asked her, well, what's the mechanics of what? We just top up the difference kind of a thing. So look at what we sent to the rec board, what went out to the Ag Society, and just top up the difference. And that's what the proposed approach would be. So the total payment outlined in this agreement for 2020, we would subtract what we've already sent to them and do the math of what went to the Ag Society and make sure that we get all the numbers square. But the final contribution for 2020 would be as it's outlined in the agreement.
Anne-Marie?
Yeah, if I may continue along that line, like in the agreement that we're going to sign, we talk about a board made up of councillors of each division and someone from the Ag Society. So again, I think, wouldn't it be cleaner if we start January 1st, 2021? That gives us 3 months to get that board in place and just do it exactly according to agreement.
I'm certainly willing to defer to council on this one. It's your agreement, so whatever your preference is there. I know Duchess Council had looked at it on Tuesday and have agreed to it. It would also put them on the hook for sending their $50-some-odd thousand to the Ag Society for this year, which they were willing to do. But yeah, by all means, I'm willing to take direction from council on it.
Kelly?
So what that means, Anne-Marie, is that we would have to return to station with the Duchess folks. Is this a piece that you just can't live with?
No, not at all. But, just reading an agreement that talks about working with a board, and there is no board. So to me, it makes more sense to start when you have everything in place to work according to the agreement. But you guys, you had the discussion. So, it's not a hill I have to die on.
And just so you know, when you're in these conversations, sometimes making sense, you just got to let it go. There's some things that you just want to shoot the person that's saying it. And I'm sure things I said, they would like to shoot me as well. But that's where it gets said, and then you let it go. But I hear what you're saying.
Clarence?
These discussions were done in good faith, and they were done for this year with this year's date on it. And I think we might be losing more than dollars if we pull back on it. Just a thought. I'm just agreeing with you, Kelly. I think we were just negotiating for 2020. I think that was what was on the table and forward. So. If you think differently, go ahead, but that's kind of where I was at. That's the date on the agreement that they agreed to.
I would agree that, yeah, that's what we were thinking. Kelly?
And if I might go so far as to say that I think we've learned, or at least I have learned some things from the last negotiations that we can work into renegotiations when the panel comes back around again. So things are evolving and things are being learned. So if there's any solace in that at all.
Questions? So Matt, you would like us to make a motion today?
Yeah, if council's so inclined to approve the agreement, that's the recommendation I have before you. And if it does get approved, then you may consider, as a follow-up to your organizational meeting, appointing the 2 members of the board today as well.
Brian?
I would be more than happy to make that motion to approve the agreement as submitted.
Okay. Other discussion? All in favor?
Just
sorry.
just a question for Matt. I tried to let it go, but it keeps coming to, now it's come to my lips. I have to ask about insurance for the Ag Society specific. We don't mention anywhere in here that we will, or that they insure the building proper. I'm sure they do, but do we have any checks on that? Checks and balances?
No, we don't. That's a good standard clause just to have as part of any agreement. I wonder if the motion shouldn't say approve the agreement with an additional clause that appropriate insurance be maintained by both the village and the Ag Society, and we can throw that wording in. I'm sure Yvonne would be fine with that. That's not coloring outside of the lines.
Would the mover be okay with that amendment? I can vote in favor of the motion then.
Thanks, Kelly, for being on the watch. All right, all in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Matt, for the work you did on that. Okay. So, item 10.5, property tax discount incentive for new development. Whoops. Sorry.
Sorry. Will we look at appointing the members of that rec board as well?
Okay, yes, we can do that. Anne-Marie?
So are we going to take the councillor of the division around Duchess? So now it would be councillor from Division 8. And, you know, Kelly, do you want to be on there because you were kind of part of that team? Or well, it could be Clarence or Molly too. Would it make sense for you guys to be the first board member on that committee because you were part of the negotiations?
How about the councillor from Div 4-3?
No, I don't want to be on there. I make a motion to appoint Brian and Kelly.
All right.
No, seriously. No, Anne-Marie, look, there is some, you know, we just jokingly said about the relationship just a minute ago, but people from Patricia do go to Dutch. Some things, do they not? They're not, aren't they part of some of the recreation that goes on there?
Yeah, they play pickleball.
Oh, whatever. I mean, it makes sense to me. And I've got nothing against Kelly being on there, but I mean, this is for the long term. So, you know, who is most familiar with the Duchess situation?
Yeah. Okay, Brian, will you work with me?
Are you withdrawing your motion, Anne-Marie?
I guess. I'm putting Brian and myself on this committee.
I will make that motion.
Good work, Councillor Amulon. All right. Any further discussion or changes or all in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. All right, Matt, is there anything else that I'm going to miss now?
Excellent. I think I'll listen into Lane's tax incentive bit, but that's it for me.
I thought that you might. Well, thank you, Matt, for all of the work you've done with our. Speaking of which, oh no, okay, talk about it afterwards. Okay, go ahead. Property tax discount.
So this particular item is before council, I guess, as a follow-up to at least 3 different conversations that have taken place in the past. The council has been approached by a very large corporate entity that has asked for consideration on relaxing the assessment, or I guess the taxation would apply to a new project. We have had discussions with council during the budget pre-planning meeting that had taken place about the possibility of some incentives that would help bring about new investments. And there has also been some discussion previously with council about things that could be considered as part of an overall economic stimulus effort to spur growth in the area. So what we're asking council for at this time is there interest that council would have in exploring options that are open to providing a tax holiday or a discount on taxation for new development that would come on stream. Starting, we're suggesting December or January 1st, 2021. And if there is consideration that would be given to doing it in 2021, it could be brought back on an annual basis for discussion in subsequent years as well to see if there's interest in extending it. That's really the crux of the matter. If there is interest in pursuing it, the question of whether or not it can be applied across the board to all assessment classes, or if it's just non-res category that would actually be eligible for that. If there's interest, then what we would like is direction from council to proceed with making sure that we have a clear understanding about the legal position the county would be in to move ahead with an initiative of that nature. That summarizes the issue. Open for discussion.
Lane, I'm just curious, do you know of other rurals that would be doing this in the south, for example, under the circumstances?
None that I'm aware of.
Okay.
It's not to say that there aren't some. I haven't researched it.
Right. So what are your thoughts? Elaine, this has to be part of a decision that we make so that you would have to go ahead and make this part of budget discussions, or would take some time to be put in place.
Correct. We were initially thinking it might be appropriate to bring it up as part of the budget discussion, but when it comes right down to it, a decision made now really wouldn't apply until 2022 anyway, because of the timing when assessment is brought on stream. But that's a tone for the investment community that the county is open to new development, and it would encourage take place.
And so this would be for any new development, or we have to sort of figure that out as well?
We're proposing that it should be broad enough to apply to all development, which would include residential as well. We just don't legally, the legislation provides that latitude. It clearly does for non-residential assessment, but it's a question of whether or not residential would also be able to benefit in the same way.
Wayne.
I don't see a problem with getting a legal opinion on this. Then once we know where we can go, then we can make a decision on that. I'm actually in favor of giving incentives to this if it promotes the development in our community. So.
Clarence, Tracy?
I guess the big thing that I have with this is if you have development that is already there. For instance, you have a dry cleaning business, just picking something out. And then you go give somebody incentives to go in competition with somebody that's already there. So I guess my question is, what is new development? And, you know, when you have that type of thing happening, which actually probably hurts somebody who's already in business, is that the right thing for a council to do when that person is paying full rate and the guy that's just starting up gets a break? I have trouble with that. And I know people do it, and I know it's done, and I just don't know if we want to get into that. If it's totally new, if it's totally different, and it's something that's just going to add but not subtract from your area, fine. But well, what if it's something that puts somebody else out of business? Add that to the fact that our taxes aren't that high that it should be the determining factor of whether a guy goes in business or not. Anyway, just some thoughts, which I'm struggling with.
It's interesting, Clarence, because it makes me think of the old economic development argument, attraction versus retention. So should you be helping the ones that are here or trying to bring new in? And the balance of that is interesting. Wayne, did you have your hand up? And Kelly and Tracy?
Yeah, and that I just wanted to make a comment that is a decision we could make after we get this opinion. But we had that solar company came to us a while back and was asking for 20% reduction. And it was probably important whether they could go ahead with the project. We rejected that. What would happen if that rejection was enough to push them over so they didn't do it? They were going to be paying $350,000 a year on taxes. 20% less now would be what, about 180 or 250? I'm not sure. Well, that's what we would have lost, was $250,000 a year. We can put this negotiations on tax reduction or assessment reduction on any project we want, but until we know what we can do, we can't do anything. So I think we should get this opinion and then worry about whether we support new business versus old business later. But let's find out what we can do.
Kelly?
I just wanted to share my experience. Global came to Bazzano on this program, 5-year tax increase incentive. They did get the land free as well, but that's a different, but the bylaw specifically said it was for industry and it was for a certain number of employees. So anybody could apply for the incentive as long as they met the criteria. And look how good that has worked out for Bazzano. I think it can be done, but I do think you want to put some criteria out so that it's followed so that you see some benefits in the community. You know, 20 employees, I think it was minimum 20 employees, and they would retain their incentive. Back in
Tracy and Lionel?
So I have a question and a comment, but my question is, and this might be a dumb question, but what does brownfield mean? It says incentives for brownfield and non-residential, and I don't know what that is.
Brownfield is contaminated sites that can't be developed otherwise. So it would be, say, a landfill site, a former landfill site. You can't do anything on that. There may be sites that have been contaminated because they've had a service station on it, or a fertilizer plant, something of that nature. And quite often there are incentive programs in place that would try and stimulate development on a brownfield site, which otherwise would not be attractive for development.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because there is quite a few properties in the county that are of that situation, that it would cost too much for someone to come in and reclaim and then establish. My struggle with this is, you know, I think of, again, it's been mentioned about the old and the new, and I just look at the, you know, the businesses that have been in the county for years and years and years, and they've stayed and they've continued through all the years. They've supported community events. They have brought their families here. They've, you know, they've made their lives here, and they're struggling just the same as everybody. But, you know, I'm struggling with the priority to give a tax break to someone that brings something new over someone's here, because they've been, I guess, feeding us all along, right? So that's my struggle with this, and I just don't know which way to go with it. Yes, we want to promote new business in our county, but at the same time, we have to look at those that are here. I don't have the answer.
Lionel does, though.
Well, I don't know if the answer is what you're looking for me, but I'm not in favor of these incentives for a couple of reasons. And the one is what we talked about, where the existing getting them and who have supported us for years. And also we have experienced the assessment review, and what do we feel about that? We felt very, very strongly that the taxes were not high enough to be that big a detriment to these companies. And we spoke of that many times. I think this is a very short-term gift for a new business. But I mean, taxes are an unnecessary evil to deal with if you're in business. That's just the reality of it. So I'm not in favor of this program. I think that is a cost of being in business that you have to accept and figure it in with your economic assessment of the business you're getting into. So I do not favor this program.
Brian?
Well, I agree with most everything that's been said, especially if it's a competing program, competing business with an existing business that's somewhere throughout our community. And I don't just mean the county, I mean our community. Now, the only caveat I'm going to say is is there a way to incentivize it so that if it is a new business, and generates new jobs, like Kelly has identified with the global example, that we could incentivize it until they actually start making money or start selling product or getting, so that there's a bit of a tax forgiveness point of view for a period of time till the business is actually or has, I shouldn't say making money, because that's not what I meant. It's about when they're actually pushing product out the door, producing something. Is that possible, or is, and I know a lot of businesses are structured like that anyways. They don't actually, like with the electrical generation business, the electrical transmission business, they don't pay any taxes until there's actually stuff being utilized anyways. But I'm not sure how it works necessarily within the business that you've identified, Lane, or not. So those are the only things. I think I agree with everything. I think the only thing that's different is that if it's something new and generates enough of a new type business, a new type employment that doesn't compete with anything that we currently have.
So Lane, your desire to get more information on it, would it be about any of the questions that we have about new businesses versus old businesses, and are there any answers to that, or is that strictly something that is our opinion?
Kevin's got his hand up on that one.
Sorry, Kevin.
Thanks, Madam Reeve. I'll step in. I wasn't going to, but I think I can save council the cost of legal advice if you want, because councils have the ability to rebate or cancel any taxes that are municipal. You have that control. You can set the parameters around how you cancel that, because you have the final decision on that. If you're looking at something outside of that, then you may need a legal opinion if it's called an incentive or something that's different. But I'm going to say a couple things. I think incentives may or may not work, but I believe something needs to change here in the county, because when I look at our equalized assessment in 2010 and I look at it in 2020, we've gone up 2.6% in 10 years. And you look at what other municipal districts and counties on average went up 23% over that period. All municipalities in general went up 30% over that period. So obviously there's something that may help or not help incentivize development. I'm not sure, big scale development, whatever. But if we don't do anything, I don't see that changing. Do I think that somebody that's going to build a $500,000 house is going to build it because they're not going to have to pay $2,000 municipal property tax for 1 year? I don't think that's going to be the trigger for them, for sure. But on a solar farm, on a quarter section where they're going to spend north of $300,000 on municipal taxes and school taxes, I think that's definitely something that could make a difference on. So scale would definitely matter, I think, on that type of investment. But saying that, I mean, it's still $30 or $40 million investment. So is $200,000 or $300,000 a difference on a $30 million investment? I'm not sure.
Anne-Marie.
Just a thought. If we're not 100% against this, would it help to give economic development the heads up that if there is a business that is interested in establishing in the County of Newell, that we as county, our council, are open to listening to them?
Like on a case-by-case basis, sort of. Well, and Lane mentions that in his proposal, that there's a possibility. So, yeah, good question, Anne-Marie. Does anyone Well, Kelly has her hand up also.
I would rather have parameters set out. I would hate to have the face-to-face, one-off, case-by-case negotiation type conversation. I think we need, if we're going to do something, we need to develop a program or a project and go with it. Otherwise, we have emotions and financial abilities come into play, and I don't think we want to get into that. At least that's my thoughts on it.
So no one-offs is what you're saying, no? Wayne?
I disagree. I think if somebody comes to us and say they're going to put a $100 million project in and they want some tax concessions from us, that's a one-off, and I'm willing to listen to them. We have to get aggressive here with our economic development. We have to look at new plans, some way to get something going on in our county. Right, like Kevin said, we're only 2%. That's ridiculous. We got to figure something out here and do something, because we're just stagnant and we're dying.
Any other thoughts? Ellen?
Kevin, have you any other jurisdiction, municipality doing such a thing and has been successful? I mean, sometimes I think, why reinvent the wheel if we look at some other areas, see what they've done?
Yeah, through the chair, I don't think there's been a lot in Alberta. I know Village of Rosemary tried dollar lot sales. It sounded good, but I don't think it really helped a whole lot there. So I think Alberta's always grown and been very strong, as the numbers that I just illustrated over 2010 to 2020 illustrate. The assessments go up, and it's when they don't go up. So my experience is back in Saskatchewan. Way back when, there was a lot of that. There was a lot of competition between municipalities to try to attract residents and businesses. Is it overly successful? I don't think so. I really don't think it's going to make a real big difference unless you're prepared to step right outside of the box. You know, if you're going to give a 3-year or 5-year incentive for somebody to build something big, that may be the difference. I don't know. But do I think it's going to make a big pile of difference? No, I don't. But I do believe we need to do something in order to try to get some development happening, whatever that might be.
Anything else for this other? Lane, do you feel as though you've had a good enough discussion, and if the direction is mixed, but we're not so sure that this is worthwhile?
Well, you seem not so sure, I guess. Sort of be an appropriate description for the discussion and direction. I don't know that we've got enough to really go forward with one way or the other. If consideration is going to be given to doing something, I think the first thing that we would have to start with is, what is the definition of new? What I had anticipated in putting this forward was that it's any new development that is applied for through the development permit approval process, which could be a residence, it could be a store, it could be a welding shop, and all of those things already exist in the area. But if council wants it to be limited to something that's not already here, then we would have to refine the definition that it for the scope of the development that would be considered. So I'm not sure that we have really a clear direction as to what should be done one way or the other.
Okay. So council, we need more clarity. Do you want Lane to dig into this any farther, or you just want to drop the idea altogether? Lionel.
Well, if taxes were going to be a benefit for a business, taxes for a business, so do we become the henchman then if they're really in trouble and force them out of business by taxes at a time when we shouldn't be? Because I know we said in the program here, but on year 5, if this company is really in dire straits, we could be the henchman that pulls the rug out from under them. If taxes are such a big part of their equation that it makes a difference, then we could be the I guess we could be the henchman again. I could use that word again because I can't think of another one. But
So taxes may not be the best way to support new business, and if it isn't, what is, I guess, is the question. Tracy?
So Lane had kind of just mentioned, like, it could be business, it could be residential. So if someone, by the definition of new, so say I already live here, but I'm gonna build a new house on a different property, then this tax incentive I could qualify for that?
Correct. It would be for any new development if the scope is determined to be that broad at the outset.
I'm getting the feeling from the crew that I'm looking at that this is not what you want to do going forward. Any difference of opinion to be heard here? Otherwise, I think we may as well end this discussion for today anyhow. I don't see a lot of people wanting to move this forward or to make a motion or give Lane direction. We're just sort of not so sure that this is the way to go, but we don't know anything else to suggest. Clarence and Tracy.
So Kevin mentioned that, we're sort of on the outs when it comes to increases in assessment and so forth. So I think what we should be maybe looking is take a big picture look at where there is growth. Why is there growth? And what is it that we need? What is it that we have that would encourage that? How do you, why did we get JBS, Lakeside, whatever you want to call them here in the first place? Oh, well, there's lots of cattle in this area. What type of things do we have that would make somebody come here and build and want to grow? How do we compete against that Calgary-Edmonton corridor? If you're a business right now in Alberta, where do you look? You look where there's activity. How do you start that activity to roll? Well, you got to find something that you have that people want to invest in. And you got to be in the right location. And I don't know how you can advertise, you can do all those types of things, but you've got to have something that draws, that makes people want to be there. How do we get people to further process the products that we produce here as far as agriculture is concerned? Where is there a hole? Where is there something that somebody would want to figure out? Businesses usually figure that out on themselves. It's not government that does that. So I think we're just all silent because we don't know what the answer is. But it's all, you're trying to encourage private investment into what? And you have to find that and make it known. And I don't know how to go about it. I mean, it's just, but you also have that natural tendency that businesses go where businesses are. And when the oil boom was going and everything was going, Brooks was going great. But that's been gone for 15 years. And what can we, and when nobody stimulated that, it was just that we had oil and gas in the ground. So, where's the next movement? If you got an answer, then you advertise it. You make sure that everybody knows about it. And when you do, you make it as friendly as possible for them, and go from there. That's about all I can think of that you can do. Don't put red tape roadblocks in their way. Don't nitpick it. Just encourage it.
Kevin?
I didn't have my hand up, but I will respond. I think that's a good exercise. I think that whole economic development concept of what we can do, what we have to offer. I think we all know what we have to offer here as our group. I mean, right from potable water to affordable taxes and great community life, great place to raise a family. Obviously, where it's lacking when we look at all the vacancies around is that there isn't the revenue generation for these places to stay open. And if there was a revenue generation like the number 2 corridor, they'd be full. So do I think a trickle effect is going to help that? At some point it will, for sure. I think development does compound, but it would take some large scale developments before that starts to compound, I think. So at the end of the day, if you set a value that if a development is over $3 million or $5 million, you could do something like that as well, where you try to encourage big scale stuff.
We just got a email earlier this week from Dan Bruin, right, about plant protein work. Did you guys all get that? Remember that? Yeah. I think that's an area that some of the southern municipalities, or there's groups working on for sure. Can we continue with this discussion possibly around our budget meetings? I mean, I think I'd like to sort of have a little talk about the assessment model changes that are coming and the impacts of that on us, and tie this all together somehow as to how much we're losing and how much we might be able to gain by initiating some incentives. I don't know. Is that a possibility for Tuesday? Matt, what do you think?
I don't know about tax incentives. From what I've read, you know, it's kind of mixed reviews. You give a tax incentive and do you just rob yourself of what was going to be developed anyways? From what I've read, you want to go big on the tax incentives. It needs to be significant enough that it will influence a decision of somebody who's really capital intensive to locate. So when we think of the requests that have come from the solar farm, they're doing the long-term projection, right? They asked for a 20% discount. If we can get that, it looks good. If you front end that discount, it might be, you know, what lands them here. So I think from what I've read, you want to be targeted. You want to go big. And really at the end of the day, like Kevin said, it's mixed results. Can you come back and say that it was the tax incentive that brought the development? Well, we probably won't ever be able to tell, but one of the things that I think we should be thinking about strategically is this is a relatively new thing introduced to Alberta, right? So this is an opportunity for us to be one of the first movers. As soon as everybody has a tax incentive, the impact is muted, right? But if you come in, you go big. I know Lane put 100%, 75, 25, 50, whatever it is. But maybe you go 3 years at zero, you look for that big development and you go courting, whether it's the next JBS or the leather manufacturer, laundry to take care of all of JBS's stuff. And it really just, it's a signal, right? We're pro-business, come develop here. You know, forget about that Highway 2 corridor. Where you want to be is in the middle of the county of Newell, where you've got access to all this recreation, water galore, affordable land prices, and we've got a competitive advantage with the foreign temporary workers and welcoming new Canadians, right? Like I think that really positions our community well. It's just like Clarence said, where do businesses go? Well, they go where they already are. That's easy. So I agree with Kevin. We need to do something. It would be nice if it was out of the box. I'm not convinced that it'll be the thing that attracts things, but it would be an interesting experiment in science anyways. And the last point I was going to make is that, you know, the province has already passed it for you on your oil and gas stuff. They've given any new development there already has the tax holiday. So let's just even the playing field and give it to everybody else too. I wouldn't give it to residential. I think I'd target it to the non-res because that's already established in the MGA. Residential, you're going to build a house here if you want to live here, but I think you're looking for the big ticket items to set up shop.
Ellen?
I couldn't agree more, Matt and Kevin. We have to do something. I like the idea. What do we have to lose? What if a few companies do come in? 1, 2, maybe more. I think it's worth to try. Again, like I said prior, what do we have to lose? I like the idea. And bigger is better, I think.
So target a number, a certain size of something, and I don't know. I think I'd like to think about this a bit more. Let's talk about it again on Tuesday. See if you can come up with any other ideas. I think we have a huge recreation and with our water, our campgrounds. Well, I think of Lake Newell more than anything. And I mean, there's really not a lot of tourism besides the campgrounds, which have been there forever. But there hasn't been a lot of other stuff ever come along. There's been lots of ideas. And, you know, there was talk about a big hotel to be built down by Steveville, and lots of things that have been thrown around that have never happened. So is this the time to try and make some of that happen. I don't know. But let's carry on with this discussion on Tuesday. Otherwise, we'll never get through this council meeting. Is that okay with you, Lane?
Very much so.
Okay. So I expect councillors to work on this over the weekend. All right, that takes us to item 10.8, the resolutions. And interestingly enough, if you've looked through them, I'm sure you will have discovered that some of them are familiar because they've come from other places, which sort of everywhere from ASB as well as Foothills Little Bow. So that was a bit of a surprise, but everybody we'll all be able to vote on them. And I don't know if there's any comments. There's the usual ones for wanting money from the province, some about keeping money levels at the same, like the police funding model freeze. The blue ribbon panel to review unpaid taxes made me chuckle because I don't think the government is going to go after oil and gas for anything at all. There's a couple in here that point back to the government and some of the decisions they've made without any input from municipalities, which is pretty understandable. Anyhow, a real range. Anybody have any questions or comments about them? Anne-Marie?
It's maybe a question for Kevin. There is one that talks about rural small business property assessment subcategories, or maybe Matt can talk to that. And what Wood Buffalo County wants is that the 50% differential between small business and non-residential, and they mentioned small mom and pop businesses compared to big oil sand businesses. And the way I read it is that you're not allowed to do more than 50%, and they are suggesting that we should change that. And so that maybe falls in line with our discussion that we just had, whether we could make that change here too.
That's resolution 17. I believe.
Yeah, I think through the chair, I think that they're just looking at being able to get a larger difference from the oil sands businesses versus the smaller businesses there. So I think the maximum is up to 50%, but I don't know that for sure. Obviously, they could handle it by canceling them. They could do whatever they wanted there. If they wanted to set the rate and then rebate back, they could. But yeah, it gets complicated when you get too many layers of taxation levels of who pays what. It's very, very political. So obviously their position is for the oil sands to pick up a lot more of the tab versus and not group everybody else into that same category. That's my guess.
So you're saying don't really vote in favor?
Well, I think the more options you have, I think is a good thing. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't support it, but it also gets very political too. And then, you know, is there going to be another subclass, or like how far down will this eventually hit? You know, I don't know if Matt knows what the difference is on the small rate now versus the big.
Yeah, so for instance, right now, let's say we had a non-residential rate of 10. the lowest we could go for non-res currently would be 7.5. What Wood Buffalo's asking is for the ability to drop that down to 5. And I think they've got a bigger problem because their differentials are out so out of whack, right? So much higher on the non-res side of things. Like it makes a big difference for them.
Good enough answer, Anne Marie. Any other questions? All right, well, we'll have to deal with those for RMA and get some information, I guess, as we go. Next on the agenda is just the assessment model changes, which I've had put on all along. Kevin, could you just give us a little quick update on what you think the decision that was announced this week means to us?
Thanks, Madam Reeves. So, yeah, we got an email on Monday, shortly after the minister had her conference from Municipal Affairs, and so it looks like this is good news for us in the short term. I think they've set a 3-year window for this, where they're estimating our impact to be about 1.2 million, roughly. With regards to that, the assessment reduction on old or non-productive stuff. Well drilling tax, they've given a holiday on that for the 3-year window. That varies for us. I think we've been as high as $1.5 million in a calendar year. I think we've been as low as 227 in 2016. So definitely we're going to see that as a bit of an impact. They're going to keep the 35% shallow gas reduction, obviously, for those 3 years as well. And then any new development in oil and gas won't be paying any tax. So it's not going to help our assessments on the other side with new, which has obviously been, our bread and butter, with 80% of our revenue coming from oil and gas and non-res. So we know that's where the money's come from. But I think overall it's positive news. I think what we do have to take this opportunity to prepare for those 3 or 4 years. I've talked internally that we're going to need to look at our non-res mill rate, obviously, over that term, because if there is going to need to be an adjustment, you're better off to creep that as you go along, so that there's not going to be a huge impact in year 4 or 5 or whatever you need to deal with it. So obviously when our assessment drops down like we think it's going to, if they implement this, we're in a whole different category of mill rates and municipalities than we are today. So I think overall it's great news. That's what I've suggested. We need a 3 or 4 year window to be able to prepare for something like this. So I think we'll have to take that opportunity to look at that as we go forward. So it's positive, way more positive than the $11 million per year that I don't know how we were going to ever fund after year 7. I mean, once everything we have is depleted, the options then are pretty dire. So at least this leaves us in a position that I think we're going to be able to manage a lot better.
So, Kevin, they said for 3 years, this will be in the next 3, so 21, 22, 23 budgets?
Yeah, I think it starts in 2021 for the shallow gas and stuff, but I think the rest of it will be into 22, 23, 24.
Okay. So it's not all happening next year?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly. We don't know exactly the details on that. I estimate it's going to be in the neighborhood of $5 million hit. which we've already got 5 to 6 million, which we've already got. How much was the shallow gas, Matt? 3.5?
Yeah, we already took the shallow gas hit and built it in. Yeah.
Any questions for Kevin on that? Well, if you say it's good news, we'll believe it. Sounds like a lot of money to me. Thank you.
It's better news.
Yeah, I guess, yes. All right, Councillor payment sheets, compensation review. Any questions or a motion to accept? Tracy moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Checks for payment. Payment register for council. Were there any questions from there? If not, Anne-Marie. Motion to accept from Anne-Marie. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Request for functions of council. Committee reports. There are some that have been submitted. Brian?
I just wanted to give a short report. I don't know if others listened in on the FCM AGM. It was a couple of hours of very entertaining, very entertaining as AGMs always are. No, I'm just kidding. Our new president is from Prince George. He's very quick. He's quite fluent in French, which sort of surprised me. But he basically spoke 50% of the time in French, and then the others in English. The thing that surprised me is there was only 159 people that were participating, which blew me away. I mean, we've all been to those conventions. There's 2,000-3,000 people that attend, and yet when given the opportunity to participate virtually, there's only 150 people go. I know it's an AGM, and I know that's like watching paint dry for the most part. But the reality is that is your federal organization. So it was that part of it sort of shocked me. I thought there'd be at least 500-600 people that would be participating. So, but there wasn't any earth-shattering stuff that came out of it. I mean, you guys see the FCM emails just like I do, and generally they talk about how good a job they do when it comes to lobbying the federal government. And I'm sure they do have an impact, but the only thing that I would say was somewhat different is, and it's been mentioned in other ones, but they probably mentioned it 3 or 4 times, is that I think some of their focus is going to be to support rural Canada more. And, it was mentioned by more than one person, and it was mentioned more than one time. So I don't know what that's going to look like. They were very short on the specifics, but it was mentioned, and it sort of, make when rural Canada is mentioned, you always sort of sit up and say, what do you mean by that? But it was mentioned a few times anyway. So.
Which is really good, because that's why a lot of the people don't really like FCM.
The other thing that was, if I may continue just for a minute, is they talked about the total number of members. And I was a little bit surprised that there's the potential for about a little over, I think it's 3,600 municipalities in the country. And just over 2,000 are members. So that I was surprised that it was that low. But then, and Kevin can probably confirm this, something you learn every time is that there's quite a few municipalities that are in, especially in the Maritimes, that are not incorporated. So they don't fall under the same category as we do. So they're not an incorporated municipality, which was like, whoa, I thought we all were, but I guess not, different parts of the country. But the FCM, the membership does represent 90% of the Canadian population with those 2,000 municipalities, just slightly over 2,000 members. And it's different in every province. They had it broken out quite, as it was kind of an interesting exercise. But yeah, it was some curious stuff that went on. Thank you.
Thanks for doing that, Brian. Anybody else have any other reports? I had mentioned that I was going to get links from the AUMA conference sessions that were quite good, and so I've been trying to get those links, which do exist, but I haven't received a call back from AUMA. The lady I first talked to said, "Oh, I know what you're talking about. I don't do that, but I'll put you over to Megan." And so I left a message for Megan and have not heard back yet from her. So I'm still hoping that I don't have to phone her back. Otherwise, I'll know that RMA is a much superior organization to AUMA. Other things this month that I have been involved in. On Monday of this past week, there was a new organization in the Southeast. It's a very targeted, and I think they're done in February. Obviously, some sort of grant that I believe was received for a Southeast regional vitality study or look at the Southeast, and it's being led by Medicine Hat College. And there are a variety of people from the Southeast involved in that, and it all fits into economic development and, everything we talk about just in a bigger scale. And it's sort of interesting how things are reinvented, because we have so many Southeast already made organizations looking at regional things like vitality, but the lady involved in this is someone I've never heard about before, but she's very energetic and positive. So, as I said, I think it must be a bunch of money that was given to do this sort of thing in COVID times. I attended the Palliser Airshed Zoom meeting yesterday morning, which was under an hour long. It was their AGM, and occasionally I have gone to that AGM if it happens to be in Brooks. It's sort of, I'll send you, actually their website is just www.palliserairshed.com, I think, and they have air monitoring stations around the Southeast, and that's what their work is. And they are now supported by Alberta Environment and Parks, so that they have become much more sustainable. County of Newell is a member. I don't know what the membership is. And not a big surprise that our air in Southeast Alberta is, and around the province, is really quite good, which always makes me wonder when people talk about all the asthma in Alberta, and that how we need green energy to fix that. So, other than that, Kelly and I have a Zonal Rec meeting, another one on Monday night in person, Kelly, right? Which will be quite exciting. And I do have to clarify with this group before I send out this email to everybody, but tomorrow morning there is it's called Women in Politics that I'd signed up for, and then the date's been moved around a bit, and it's being organized by the mayor of Drumheller, who is a woman, obviously. Anyhow, the last email I got was that we could send out the invitation to our colleagues, and I didn't know if she meant female colleagues or all colleagues. I'm sort of being bad because I don't always believe in separating out people to like this. So you might get an invitation from me if I find out from her if I can invite all of my colleagues rather than just the female variety. So stay tuned. And tonight I'm attending, why I came in today, at 5:30, there is an AGM of the Chamber of Commerce, but they also are, and it's just sort of a gesture of small business support or business support that I decided to go to there. They have announced their 5 businesses of the year, and they're going to, I think tonight announce one, and I think it's probably to get a few people out to their AGM, which I've never attended before, but JBS was one of the nominated businesses that is out in the county. And as I said, it was just a gesture to support small business, which we talk about a lot, and I think is pretty important these days. Anyhow, anybody else have anything else to talk about or report on? Otherwise, we will move on to
Molly?
Yes.
Molly?
Kelly.
I was just, I was listening, but I also checked my email. We received an email from Mariana saying that JBS is investing $2 million to the city of Brooks Canada Center.
Oh.
So yeah, it's in our box.
Is that part of their support of the JBS that they promised? Or is this new money?
It looks like new money to me, but you read the email, see what you think.
Okay.
The other thing I wanted to mention is on November 11th, we have our Remembrance Day ceremony in Bassano again. And I just saw a notice that it is happening. So I thought I'd let you know, Molly.
Okay. Ariana and the wreaths I sort of forgotten about. So the Legion is proceeding with their events. I can't imagine how. Oh, that's interesting. Not sure how they could do that safely.
Yeah, I hadn't heard anything, but I'll follow up and make sure we get wreaths. And yeah, you said Sandra was going through for sure. I'll contact Brooks and see what they're doing as well.
Maybe they're just doing an outside thing, Kelly, or?
That's quite possible. The notice just was advising that Mike Doyle, I think his name is in charge.
Oh, yeah.
Will be happening, but no further details.
Okay. We were over lunchtime. Todd had made mention of the ag and forestry cuts that happened yesterday by our UCP government, which affected CDC here south. And I just happened to check my email. My phone says that my email's too full to send any messages. I got to start working on some of that stuff. But Ryan Dahlman from the Prairie Post was asking questions. So I've been trying to get a message back to him in case I look distracted at one point in time to say that I'm in a council meeting. But my phone kept saying can't send a message because my email is full or something. So I'll fix that. Anything else? Post agenda items, information items. We need to move in camera, I believe, if I haven't skipped over anything. Don't see anybody. Did I miss something? Hubie?
I'm just making the motion to move into camera.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Opposed? We'll move into camera. Thank you, Hubie.